I think Camilla was in a very, very unpleasant situation. She was almost became a prisoner in her own home. She was vilified. She was absolutely hated by everyone.
Prince William and Prince Harry had barely stood together in public for years. Their relationship had been fractured by distance, interviews, and a royal crisis. Neither seemed ready to end. Then Queen Elizabeth II died, and the brothers suddenly appeared side by side again, just as her final warning about Camilla began shaping the new reign. The timing was impossible to ignore. Their grandmother's message reached directly into the deepest wound they shared, the loss of Princess Diana and everything that followed. So why did William bring Harry back into the royal fold at that exact moment? And what had the Queen made clear about Camilla that convinced both brothers their division could go no further? The message arrived on February 6, 2022. That date was not chosen by accident. It marked the Queen's 71st accession day. 70 years earlier, her father, King George VI, had died at Sandringham. Elizabeth had become queen while still only 25 years old. Now, at the age of 95, she was looking toward the reign that would follow her own. Then, near the end, she turned directly toward Charles and Camilla. The Queen said she knew the public would give her son and his wife the same support it had given her. And then came the line that settled the question. It was her sincere wish that Camilla should be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. For years, the palace had used softer language. When Charles and Camilla married, officials suggested she might one day be called Princess Consort. That title would have recognized her position without placing her directly into the role normally held by a king's wife. But Elizabeth removed that uncertainty. She did not leave the matter for Charles to settle after her death. She settled it herself. That decision carried enormous weight. Elizabeth was telling the country that Camilla belonged beside the next king. But the message reached beyond Camilla. It also reached the two sons of Diana. William and Harry had lived with the consequences of Charles and Camilla's relationship since childhood. They had seen their parents' marriage break apart. They had watched private pain become public news, and they had lost their mother before the family could fully heal. The Queen was not asking them to erase any of that. She was making something more important clear. The crown could not keep fighting the same battle forever. Camilla's position had been decided. Charles's reign would begin with her beside him. And when that moment came, the family would have to stand together. The warning inside Elizabeth's message was quiet, but unmistakable. Old pain would not disappear. Diana's memory would not disappear. But neither could be allowed to tear the family apart during the next transfer of power. For William, that meant balancing Diana's son with the duties of a future king. For Harry, it meant deciding whether loyalty to his mother could exist beside the royal future Elizabeth had chosen. But one detail made it more complicated. William and Harry had reportedly stood together against Camilla's marriage once before. And that shared memory reached back almost 20 years. To understand the Queen's final decision, we have to return to April 9, 2005. That was the day Charles married Camilla. The Queen and Prince Philip did not attend the civil ceremony, but the Queen did attend the service of prayer and dedication at St. George's Chapel. She also hosted the reception at Windsor Castle. The Queen did not immediately demand that the public embrace her. Instead, Camilla was expected to prove herself through service. But Diana's memory never disappeared. For many people, Camilla remained connected to the most painful years of Charles and Diana's marriage. Diana had spoken publicly about the relationship. The newspapers had repeated the details for decades. And William and Harry had grown up inside the consequences. The Queen understood that Camilla could not become consort through ceremony alone. She needed years of steady work, and she needed Elizabeth's approval. That approval came slowly. Then came the 2022 Accession Day message. Elizabeth had watched Camilla serve for 17 years as Charles's wife. By that point, leaving her future title uncertain could have created a crisis after the Queen's death. Any delay would have reopened every argument surrounding Diana. Elizabeth chose to remove that danger. She gave Camilla the title before Charles even reached the throne. The decision protected the succession. It also protected her son. Charles would not have to begin his reign by defending his wife against a new public argument. The Queen had done it for him. And that was the deeper warning. The next reign could not begin with Charles's sons divided while the family fought over Camilla's place. Sooner or later, William and Harry would have to decide whether their shared pain would separate them or bring them back together when the crown needed them most. Subscribe for more serious royal documentaries built around the decisions, rivalries, and private wounds that changed the monarchy. Because the first major clue came from Harry himself. According to his own account, both brothers had once asked Charles not to marry Camilla. Harry described the moment in his memoir, Spare. The book was published on January 10, 2023. By then, the Queen had died. Charles was king, and Camilla held the place Elizabeth had chosen for her. Harry wrote that before the 2005 wedding, he and William spoke with their father about Camilla. According to Harry, the brothers made their position clear. They supported Charles. They wanted him to be happy, but they asked him not to marry her. Before their later conflict, William and Harry were united on one of the most painful questions inside the family. They were reacting to everything her marriage represented: Diana's public pain, Charles's affair, the breakdown of their parents' relationship, and the possibility that Camilla's new position might appear to replace their mother. But a royal wedding would make that relationship permanent before the country. What would happen when Charles became king? The wedding went ahead. William and Harry attended. Even while carrying doubts, they stood beside their father publicly. The brothers could disagree privately and still appear during important royal moments. It controlled how the pain was shown. After the wedding, Camilla became the Duchess of Cornwall. She did not use the title Princess of Wales. One day, Charles would become king, and when that happened, the wife of a king would normally become queen. Then Elizabeth answered it herself. Her 2022 message reached back to the concern William and Harry had carried before the wedding. They had asked their father not to marry Camilla. Now their grandmother had publicly confirmed that Camilla would stand beside him as queen. That decision could have pushed the brothers further apart. William's position tied him closely to the crown. Harry had already left royal duties. But beneath those different roles was still one shared wound: the loss of Diana. And that wound explained why the Queen's message about Camilla carried far more emotional force than an ordinary royal title. Princess Diana died on August 31, 1997. William was 15, Harry was 12. The brothers were staying at Balmoral when they were told that their mother had died in Paris. 6 days later, they walked behind her coffin. The procession moved from Kensington Palace toward Westminster Abbey. The boys were joined by Charles, Prince Philip, and Diana's brother, Charles Spencer. Millions watched. But William and Harry were not thinking about history. They were two children following their mother for the final time. Camilla remained connected to that conflict. Diana's famous Panorama interview had made the relationship impossible to separate from the collapse of the marriage. She said there had been 3 people in it. For William, the future created a painful split. He was Diana's son, but he was also the future heir expected to support Charles. He could protect his mother's memory without challenging his father's reign. Harry's position was different. He was not the direct heir. He had more freedom to speak, but he had less authority over royal decisions. Still, both men understood the emotional meaning of Camilla's rise. When Elizabeth called for Camilla to become queen consort, she was not simply handing out a title. She was asking the family to move beyond a conflict that had defined it for decades. The Queen had seen what happened when private divisions became public warfare. She had lived through the 1992 separation of Charles and Diana. She had seen the television interviews. She had watched the divorce become final in 1996. Then she had faced the national reaction to Diana's death. Elizabeth understood that another public fight around Camilla could damage the monarchy at the exact moment Charles inherited it. Her message was designed to stop that. William and Harry could keep loving Diana. They could honor her work. Camilla would become queen. The brothers' response would come not through a joint interview, but through action. And the moment arrived faster than anyone expected. 7 months after the Accession Day message, the Queen died at the same Scottish estate where William and Harry had first heard about Diana. On the 8th of September 2022, Buckingham Palace announced that Queen Elizabeth had died peacefully at Balmoral. She was 96. At the moment Elizabeth died, Charles became King Charles III. Camilla became queen consort. William became the heir apparent. Harry remained the king's younger son, but outside the working royal structure. The Queen's February message was no longer a future wish. It had become reality. On September 9, 2022, Charles addressed the nation. He paid tribute to Elizabeth. Then he spoke about Camilla. He said he would depend on her loving help. He also referred to her loyal public service. The message placed Camilla firmly beside the king. During the same address, he announced that William would become Prince of Wales. That placed William directly beneath him in the line of duty. He was now the immediate heir. He and Meghan had stepped away from royal duties in 2020. Their interview with Oprah Winfrey had exposed serious family divisions. That possibility created serious palace pressure. Elizabeth's final message had asked for support around Charles and Camilla. A public conflict between Charles's sons would have weakened that request immediately. William had a choice. He could appear only with Catherine. That would fit the formal royal structure. Or he could invite Harry and Meghan to join them. William chose the second. 2 days after the Queen's death, a car arrived near Windsor Castle. When the doors opened, 4 people stepped into view, and for a moment, the family division was pushed aside. The date was September 10, 2022. Thousands of people had gathered outside Windsor Castle. Flowers covered the ground near the gates. William and Catherine were expected to view the tributes. Then Harry and Meghan appeared beside them. It was the first time the two couples had been seen together publicly in more than 2 years. Reports said the invitation had come from William. The 4 walked through the gates together. For around 40 minutes they spoke with members of the public. William and Harry were standing side by side. The Queen's death had done what months of family discussion had not managed to do. It placed them in the same public frame. The walkabout was born from grief, but the royal structure surrounding it made the moment far more important. Charles was now king. Camilla was now queen consort. William was now Prince of Wales. Harry was the son who had left royal duty but returned for the family farewell. Every part of Elizabeth's final plan was visible. William could protect Diana's memory while supporting the transition. Harry could carry his anger toward the palace and still answer his brother's invitation. Together, they recognized that the Queen's death was larger than the division between them. The walkabout also protected Charles's first days as monarch. Instead of headlines showing 2 estranged brothers, the public saw William and Harry united again. That mattered because Elizabeth's final message had been about continuity. The monarchy had changed hands. Camilla's title had been confirmed. and Charles's sons had appeared together. The past was still there, but for the first time in years, it was no longer controlling the brothers. That is where the Queen's warning became visible. The family could carry its wounds, but it could not allow those wounds to destroy the transfer of the crown. Subscribe if you want more royal documentaries where public actions reveal what palace statements leave unsaid. Because the Windsor appearance was only the first test. 4 days later, William and Harry would walk together behind another coffin, and the image would return them directly to Diana. On September 14, 2022, the Queen's coffin left Buckingham Palace. It was carried on a gun carriage toward Westminster Hall. King Charles walked behind the coffin. Beside him were Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward. 25 years earlier, the brothers had walked behind Diana. Now, they were following their grandmother. William was the new Prince of Wales. He wore military uniform. Harry wore a mourning suit because he was no longer a working royal. William and Harry were placed together as the King's sons and the Queen's grandsons. Camilla traveled as Queen Consort. Her title was no longer being discussed as a future possibility. It had become part of the procession's order. The Queen's final decision surrounded the brothers. Their father was king. Camilla was queen. William was heir. Harry had returned. And Elizabeth's coffin moved ahead of them all. They could not erase every wound in a single procession, but they could decide what mattered most during their grandmother's farewell. They chose each other. They walked together. They mourned together. And by taking their places inside the new royal order, they answered Elizabeth's final warning in the clearest way available to them. They were supporting the same transition. They were accepting the future their grandmother had settled, and they were refusing to let their conflict become larger than Elizabeth's final wish for the crown. The Queen's authority still had power. Even after she was gone, her final decisions were shaping how the family behaved. But the hardest question had not disappeared. Harry's deeper feelings about Camilla would soon become public, and those words would show how much pain remained beneath the united image. Only months after the funeral, Harry released Spare. Harry described the effort to improve Camilla's public image after Diana's death. He spoke about relationships between royal households and the press. He also described the concern he and William had carried before Charles's wedding. Harry still viewed Camilla through the history surrounding Diana. In interviews, Harry also said he felt compassion for her. He understood that she had faced years of public criticism. He recognized that Charles loved her. The conflict came from what her rise represented. Camilla was not only his father's wife, she was connected to the most painful chapter of his childhood. Now she held the title of Queen. William had to process the same history from inside a different role. As Prince of Wales, he was expected to support the king. He could honor Diana without publicly challenging Camilla. He could preserve his mother's charitable legacy. He could speak about her influence on his life. But he also had to protect the stability of his father's reign. That is the difference between the brothers. Harry could speak openly about the emotional conflict. William had to carry it while remaining inside the system. If the old Charles-Diana-Camilla conflict became the main argument of the new reign, the monarchy could be pulled backward before it had even moved forward. Elizabeth had settled the title in advance. Her warning demanded that William and Harry place the survival of the family. Above the conflict, Camilla's rise threatened to reopen. During the mourning period, both brothers did exactly that. They appeared together as Camilla took her new place. They followed the Queen's coffin while Charles led the family. They allowed no argument over Diana, Camilla, or the past to overshadow the succession. That restraint was not weakness. It was the clearest proof of their unity. They united under their grandmother's authority and accepted the royal future she had chosen. Grief created the opening. Elizabeth's warning gave that reunion its meaning. Before that happened, there was one final ceremony. On September 19, 2022, every title, every position, and every family wound entered Westminster Abbey together. The Queen's state funeral took place at Westminster Abbey. Inside, the royal family took its place. Charles entered as king. Camilla entered as queen consort. William and Catherine represented the immediate future of the monarchy. Harry and Meghan attended as members of the family, but not as working royals. William wore military uniform. Harry wore a dark mourning suit with his medals. Once again, they walked behind the Queen. This was the third major public appearance of their reunion. First came the Windsor walkabout, then the procession to Westminster Hall. Now came the state funeral. William made a clear choice to include Harry. Harry made a clear choice to return and take part. Charles and Camilla were at the head of the new reign. William stood as heir. Harry stood as the younger son. Years of tension could not disappear overnight, and neither brother pretended otherwise. But royal unity has never depended on public affection alone. It is revealed by who shows up, who walks beside whom, and who places a shared duty above private injury. Their grandmother had devoted her life to the crown. She had also made her final position on Camilla clear. The brothers could not honor Elizabeth while challenging that settlement during her funeral. So they stood together because Diana's memory still bound them, because Elizabeth's authority still guided them, and because refusing to unite would have damaged the farewell and the royal transition their grandmother had spent years preparing. The answer to the title was now unfolding in public. Elizabeth had delivered the warning. William had opened the door. Harry had stepped through it. And the brothers were united again when the future of the crown demanded it. Return to the Queen's message of February 2022. Elizabeth asked the public to support Charles and Camilla. She gave Camilla the title of Queen Consort in advance, and she did it during the final year of her life. The message sounded like a blessing. Beneath it was a clear royal warning. The crown could not survive if every new reign reopened every old family battle. Charles and Diana's marriage had ended. Diana had died. Charles had married Camilla. The next reign would begin with Camilla beside him. Elizabeth wanted that question settled before her death. Charles's first days as king could not be consumed by arguments over his wife. William and Harry's grief over Diana could not be allowed to pull them onto opposing sides while the crown changed hands. The Queen understood something crucial about her grandsons. They carried the same loss, even when they carried it differently. William protected Diana's memory from inside the monarchy. Harry protected it by speaking openly about what he believed had harmed her. Those paths had pushed the brothers apart. Yet after Elizabeth died, the shared loss buried beneath their adult conflict helped bring them back together. They were Diana's sons, but they were also Elizabeth's grandsons. On September 10, 2022, William invited Harry to appear at Windsor. That was an act of unity. On September 14th, they walked side by side behind the Queen's coffin. That was an act of duty. On September 19th, they joined the state funeral, while Charles and Camilla led the new royal order. That was an act of acceptance. They accepted the structure Elizabeth had chosen and stood together inside it. Camilla was queen consort. Charles was king. William was heir. Harry remained part of the family despite living outside royal duty. For those 10 days of mourning, the brothers placed their grandmother's final warning above the division that had separated them. That is the title's direct payoff. William and Harry united after Queen Elizabeth secured Camilla's place, and made clear that the next reign could not begin with the family at war. They did something more powerful than issue a carefully written statement. They stood together inside the royal transition and showed that Elizabeth's warning had been heard. The warning worked because Elizabeth understood the power of timing and the authority of her final word. Had she left the title unsettled, Charles might have faced a new public conflict immediately after her death. William could have been forced to answer difficult questions about Camilla. Harry's past concerns could have become the focus of the succession. Instead, the Queen removed the uncertainty herself. She used the authority of her 70-year reign to settle the matter. That protected Camilla. It protected Charles. And it gave William and Harry a reason to choose the same side when the crown needed them most. Choosing that side did not betray Diana. Their love for their mother remained unchanged. William continued to speak about her influence. Harry continued to connect his own decisions to her experience. Diana's memory remained part of both men. Elizabeth's message demanded that her memory and the succession be allowed to exist together. The family could honor Diana without refusing Camilla's constitutional place. That was the balance William had to accept as the future king. It was the balance Harry had to accept as a grandson attending the Queen's funeral. The emotional cost was visible. This was not a staged display of easy affection, and it did not need to be. For a family divided by interviews, books, accusations, and distance, genuine unity required a deliberate decision. William had to extend the invitation. Harry had to accept it. Both men had to walk in the same line, and both allowed their grandmother's final warning to guide the moment. The Queen had spent decades holding difficult parts of the royal family together. In death, she managed it once more. Her final settlement around Camilla placed Charles's future beyond argument. Her funeral placed William and Harry beside each other, and for a few days, the brothers returned to the role they had shared before titles and palace divisions pulled them apart. They were two grandsons saying goodbye. They were two sons still carrying Diana. And they were two brothers standing inside a future their grandmother had already chosen. Subscribe to AW Media for more serious royal documentaries built from public records, family timelines, and the moments that changed the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth had issued her final warning without anger, accusation, or spectacle. Camilla's place was settled. Charles's reign would move forward. And when the moment of transition arrived, William and Harry were expected to remember that the crown, and the family behind it, could not survive another open war over the past. When that moment came, the brothers answered. William extended the invitation. Harry accepted it. And beneath the walls of Windsor Castle,